When we bring a hound into our care, we tend to not know their background. They could have been running loose, they could have been in a home, but a lot of times when they come to our shelter, some of these hounds have never even seen a bed before, which is heartbreaking. They're scared, they're in an environment that we assume is safe and comfortable, but they don't understand that. They're used to being outside and being on their own. So the transition can be difficult for some of them.
Hounds are different because they tend to be genetically predisposed to do certain things. They also have not had the experience that some other dogs have had.
Hunters will usually see their dogs as working dogs. They spend a lot of money into their dogs for performance. They're not going to go out here and they're not going to be the friendliest with them. They're not going to be like house pets, because if they do, like I said, the dog's not going to perform. They're looking for performance out the dog, and that's what they're looking to maintain.
We find a hound dog, they get put into a shelter, we take them out, we put a collar and a leash on them. That's really different and difficult for hounds, because the saying "release the hounds" is accurate. I mean, that's what they do. They release them and they run.
So silly. What are you saying, Goldie?
The average amount of hounds that we do take here at the facility is probably a third of the amount of dogs we take in. And the only reason you do see a lot of the hounds here in the facility is because a lot of rescues kind of shy away from your hounds because they do sit here so long and they are hard to place, again, because they have to make that transition from performance into an everyday house pet. As a regular lab that's sitting here in the shelter would have no problem doing that. So you'll tend to come out to the same shelter and you'll see the same hound time and time after again. That hound might sit here for 2 or 3 months.
A lot of challenges rural shelters face is lack of basic medical resources. So us going in there is really helpful to them because we can provide a lot of extra medical and behavioral resources for those pets that desperately need it.
So our relationship with Richmond SPCA is very good. Majority of the time I always end up calling Nicole, in which their team will come out and they'll assess the dogs.
Typically what happens is our partners reach out and call us for support, and I get a team ready to go out to their shelter and help them to the best of our ability.
Our daily routine is we're coming in, we're cleaning, running our calls, checking phones, trying to deal with the public. So we don't have a lot of time to interact with the dogs and animals and stuff here at the shelter.
Our admissions counselors, when they get to our partners, they evaluate the pets that are in their care.
It's good for our insight. We learn more about the dog.
For all dogs coming in, the intake process is essentially the same. The more rural the area that the dog is coming from, there are some factors that might make the initial intake a little more complicated. They're going to have had a longer commute. Their stress levels are going to be a little bit higher. They may have come from an environment where they weren't being handled, and there are already higher stressed animals. So the intakes may be a little bit more limited initially. They are first done just in the kennel, a very simple exam until we can allow the dog to really blossom, get around with the shelter, get with our training department, and see what the dog actually is doing and what their needs are.
Hounds tend to come in like we all have our own personalities. Some are independent, some are aloof, some are snuggly, some are looking for socialization. It's always, how do we make the hound's life, this dog's life here, better?
The amount of medical needs that one hound can have can be far more than an average dog. Even though their medical needs aren't unique, they're often plentiful, and the costs really do add up. That's where the Cinderella Fund becomes extremely important for our hounds. They are one of the breeds that we see by far the most are hound mixes, and because of that we are seeing a plethora of different diseases and medical needs. We do often find that these dogs are going to be more underweight. They're going to have more dietary needs. They're going to have poorer coats. Often what we see is severe dental wear from chewing on bars. We worry more about external parasites, ticks and fleas. We are seeing a lot more heartworm cases from mosquitoes, more Lyme disease, all of which require additional lab workup to get a confirmation diagnosis and then treatment.
They need to know that they can trust us. Since sometimes we don't know their history, it makes it a little bit more challenging. And sometimes you can just get a little bit trust with them, and that sometimes has to be enough.
There's such a huge difference between the first day that some of these hounds arrive and when they're ready for adoption. Their goofy personality and their fun-loving energy starts to come out, and it's just a really great experience to see.
Our enrichment specialist has organized it so that we can get a pack of dogs together, and what we've learned with these dogs is the ones that are a little shy blossom when they're in a group. So what this helps these dogs to do is just become more social and sometimes less reactive. You know, it may take a walk or two, but most of the time they just kind of find their stride. And then all of a sudden everybody's nose is down and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, and they just dog.
If you're thinking about bringing a hound at home, don't let nobody talk you out of it, because they are great dogs. As they learn, you will learn. And eventually, over time, you know, they will be that pet that you were always looking for.
It's a big collaboration. It does really take a village. And with the Cinderella Fund, what it does, it allows us to provide medical and emotional and physical treatment that a lot of these dogs have not gotten. And it's a little strange for them because they're not used to being cared for. And so when you see a dog brighten up or bay when they're in a buddy group or tracking, it's just magic. And they just dog.